Evening, everyone, and welcome to our weekly study session. Excited to have you all here with us this evening, and thank you for everyone who put something in the chat for us to peck at. I'm going to drop something in the chat. This is in our Facebook group as well, but I always want to make sure that folks have it because it's important to know the distribution of questions for the exam. It's really important to understand that not all sections are created equal. And if you're preparing, when preparing for the exam, it's important to go for the biggest ones and really master that. When it comes to the actual sale of real estate and things of that nature, I promise there is plenty of training and education and opportunity and resources available inside of our company to help you with anything that you might come across. But for the purposes of passing the exam, not everything's created equal. A perfect example of this is if you ever run into a property management situation, we have a whole property management company with about 1,000 doors under management, and anything property management related, you will not be touching since you cannot manage other properties inside of our brokerage. And you'll be referring out. So maybe not something you're going to encounter in the real estate world, and not something you need to worry too much about for the exam because there's only 2 questions on leasing and property management. Conversely, contracts are something that you could never know enough about. So for those of you who haven't passed either section, your big money makers on the national exam are going to be contracts, practice of real estate, general principles of agency, and financing. So if you take those 4 sections, it's 53 of the 80 questions on the national exam. Now it only takes 56 to pass. So if you really knew your stuff on those 4, you only have to get 3 other questions right along the way to pass. For your state level exam, for those of you who passed national but not state, you really invest your time in license laws and rules of the Ohio Real Estate Commission and brokerage relationships. That's 30 of the 40 questions, right? If you guessed and got 1 out of 4 on every other one, you'd pass with flying colors. And so keep that in mind as you are investing time outside of our time together on Tuesday evenings, that you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. So we're going to start with contracts. That was the first one that went into the chat. Then we'll bounce over to license laws and rules, and then we'll hit financing. And if we have time for anything else, we'll throw some other stuff in there this evening. So let's go ahead and dive in with contracts. And for those of you who haven't joined us in a while or joining us for the first time, the way that we work through this is I'm going to read the question, read the answers, and then just need an A, B, C, or D in the chat to correspond with the multiple choice. If you don't know, or you're confused, or you're like, hey, this is a concept that I really need more help with, put a question mark in the chat. That'll be helpful to me so that I'll be able to see like, hey, if 3 or 4 people put a question mark in, if we all end up getting it wrong, I'll stop and go over a little bit more on that particular subject matter. And of course, if you have any other questions throughout the evening, use that chat box to load those up. All right. For question number 1, a lender qualifies a new borrower who signs a note and mortgage. Then the same terms of the note and mortgage are transferred to a new mortgagor, relieving the original mortgagor of liability. This is known as A, defeasance, B, subrogation, C, assignment, or D, novation. So everybody's on the right path. It's we're narrowed down to either assignment or novation. More people feel like it's novation, and that's correct. And the major differentiator here is the relief of liability, right? If the original mortgagor is not relieved of liability, this is going to not be novation, right? An assignment is the transfer of one party's interest to another, but the assigner is not released of that liability. And so that's an important distinction to hold. When you see that trigger of liability is removed, you know that it's novation. Question number 2. A seller signs an exclusive right to sell listing agreement with a broker. However, the seller's brother-in-law makes an offer on the property the next day, not realizing it had been placed in a listing. Which statement's true? A, the broker is not entitled to a commission. B, since the seller found the buyer, the listing is sold. Or void, excuse me, the listing is void. C, the seller will not have to pay a commission. Or D, the broker is entitled to a commission. Which one of these is true? D is going to be the winner here. That exclusive right to sell is going to entitle the broker to a commission no matter what. An exclusive agency agreement would look differently, because in those scenarios, if the seller finds the buyer, right, or has the relationship with the buyer, then a commission may not be due. Question number 3. If a broker receives 2 offers for the same house at the same time, one from an agent and a cooperating brokerage and another from his own agent, they should A, submit both offers, B, reject both offers, C, submit the cooperating broker's offer to the seller first, or D, submit his agent's offer to the seller first. A is correct. The duty to the seller is to present all offers, regardless of who brings them. And guys, remember, this is a real one that you'll use, regardless of the validity of those offers, right? If you receive a lowball offer, an offer with ridiculous terms, you can certainly have an opinion about it, but you cannot refuse or accept an offer without reviewing it and presenting it to your clients. Question number 4. A seller signs an exclusive agency agreement with a broker. The day after the listing is signed, the seller's brother-in-law decides to make an offer without knowing the property's been listed. Which statement's true? All right, we just talked about this. Question number, option A, the broker is not entitled to a commission. B, the buyer will have to pay a commission. C, the seller will have to pay a commission. Or D, since the buyer was found during the listing period, the broker is entitled to a commission. As we just talked about, the broker is not going to be entitled to a commission here because it's an exclusive agency agreement, not an exclusive right to sell. Question number 5, when an offer is presented, the seller may A, make a counteroffer, B, do any of these options listed here, C, accept the offer so it becomes a contract, or D, reject the offer. B is the correct answer here. And it's important, you want to inform your clients that these are the options that exist for them, and make sure that they know that when they reject the offer's terminated. That's the end of the game, right? If they make a counteroffer, that's actually 2 things happening at once. That is a rejection of the offer, which terminates the original offer and puts forth a new offer. So the reason that that's important is your clients cannot make a counteroffer, have that counteroffer refused, and then go back to the original offer. Once they make a counter or reject it, it's a dead deal. The same offer could be resubmitted, of course, but in the terms of what makes a binding contract, that does not. Question number 6, a seller signs a listing agreement that commences today and ends on December 31st. The listing agent tries as hard as possible, but simply cannot find a buyer who is interested in purchasing the property. After the first of the year, the listing is going to be terminated by A, a unilateral agreement, B, expiration, C, statute of fraud, or D, seller rescission. When listings expire, they're terminated via expiration, right? This is one reason why all listing agreements have to have a definitive expiration date or a start date and end date. Question number 7, a buyer made an earnest money deposit of $500 on a $40,000 house, but withdrew the offer before the seller accepted it. The broker should dispose of the buyer's earnest money by A, paying it to the court, B, keeping it as a part of his commission, C, giving it to his seller, or D, returning it to the buyer. Important distinction here around earnest money, even when it's submitted with a contract, which is uncommon in this day and age, but until that contract is accepted, that money never stops being the buyer's, right? And when the property closes, it ends up on a closing disclosure form where it becomes the seller's. In between, that's nobody's money, right? And you want to make clear to your clients that there is a chance that they will not get that money back, right? Now, most of the time you'll see a mutual release signed and everybody parts ways, money goes back to the appropriate parties. But in certain circumstances, the seller can withhold those funds, or the buyer may even release the funds to the seller if, you know, you're 4 weeks into a 5-week close period and all of a sudden the buyer's back. So just know that it's nobody's money, and everybody should understand that no one has a claim to it once you're under contract. Question number 8, the term specific performance refers to A, the agreement of all parties of the contract, B, a legal procedure or action brought by either the buyer or seller to enforce terms of a contract, C, an executed contract in which all elements of the contract have been specifically fulfilled, or D, the right of either party to cancel a contract provided legal notice is given. Yes, and the B's have it. Specific performance is when you use a legal remedy to make somebody specifically perform their obligations. Question number 9. If upon a receipt of purchase under certain terms, the seller makes a counter offer, the prospective purchaser is A, bound by the agent's decision, B, relieved of the original offer, C, bound by the original offer, or D, bound to accept a counter offer. This is the situation we just discussed, and it is going to be B because whenever that counter offer takes place, it is a termination of the original offer and the putting forth of a new one. Question number 10, earnest money is best described as A, good faith money deposited by the purchaser, B, the commission paid to the broker, C, the money deposited by the purchaser with the broker seller to pay the expense of examining the title, or D, consideration for the sale of the property. That is going to be A. It is a good faith money deposit. Question number 11. An agreement of sale is a contract between A, the seller and the broker, B, the buyer and the seller, C, the buyer and the broker, or D, the seller, the buyer, and the mortgagee. Who is an agreement of sale betwixt? And the B's showing up in the chat again. That agreement is between the buyer and the seller. You're an agent to one of those parties involved in the transaction, but the arrangement and the exchange is between those two parties. Question number 12. Who is authorized to rescind a voidable contract? A voidable contract. Is it A, the agent and the seller only? Is it B, neither party? A void contract may be rescinded. Only a void contract may be rescinded. C, only the minor. And D, either party. And I will tell you, if you've heard me go through this before, this is a poorly worded question. So don't stress too much, but let's get some answers in the chat. So C is going to be the correct answer here. And the reason for that is the minor is going to be considered the injured party, right? You can't enter into a contract with a minor. In the event that you do, they would be the injured party, perceivably because they are unable to enter into contracts. And with that, they have the right to void the contract. They do not have to void the contract. You'll also see this show up whenever parties enter into contracts under fraudulent terms, right? So let's say the seller puts fraudulent terms is in the contract, the buyer signs it, the elements of fraud are exposed. That buyer can still go forward with the contract if they so choose to still execute the contract. Question number 13, the law requiring certain real estate contracts to be in writing to be enforceable is A, the statute of frauds, B, the statute of limitations, C, parole evidence law, or D, the written instrument law. A is correct. That is the statute of fraud. All right, question number 14, an option. An option is A, something that keeps open the offer for a specified amount of time. B, requires the optioner to complete the purchase if the optionee so elects. C, makes the seller liable for a commission. Or D, gives the optionee an easement on the property. B is correct. It requires the optionor to complete the purchase if the optionee so elects. So optionor is the person giving the option. Optionee is the person receiving the option. And question number 15, Mary buys Sally's property, which is subject to a mortgage. After 5 years of payment, Mary defaults and misses a payment. Which is the appropriate remedy for the original mortgager? Is it A, that they should sue only Mary as she assumed Sally's mortgage? B, the mortgager has no recourse since there was no assumption. C, they should sue both Mary and Sally as they both are liable for the mortgage. Or D, they should sue only Sally as Mary took only the property subject to a mortgage and there was no assumption. So the first thing we'll want to answer here is, who is the mortgagor in this equation? And then What do we do with that information? So this is a sneaky question. The main thing that this is testing, or that you're being quizzed on here is, one, do you know the difference between a mortgagor and a mortgagee? So the assumption, no pun intended here, that most people make is that the person who gets a mortgage is the mortgagee. But in actuality, with a purchase money mortgage, you are actually buying the property and then giving a mortgage to the bank. So you, as the buyer, are the mortgagor, and the bank is the mortgagee. So with that in mind, because Sally's property is subject to a mortgage, Sally is actually the mortgagor in this situation. And whomever holds the note on that property is the mortgagee. Now, there's nothing in here that says that assumption or novation occurred. It just means that Mary bought the property from Sally, which is subject to a mortgage. So Sally, we assume in this question, is still carrying the mortgage. She's getting monthly payments from Mary, which she is then depositing or she's putting towards the mortgage. So B, I believe, is going to be the correct answer in this situation, because there is no recourse against Mary as the original mortgager. So let's see what that says. Yep, Sally's the mortgager. So what do you know? Most people confuse mortgager or mortgagee. It does not state that there was any loan assumption. Therefore, Sally remains liable and cannot sue Mary. The bank, the mortgagee, can only sue Sally because they don't really care that Mary bought the property. So that was that's a tough one. It's a dicey one, but an important one. All right. So I think we said we were going to go into license laws and rules of the Ohio Real Estate Commission. So this is one of your big two on the state level exam. So make sure that you are dialed in here for those of you who are taking both portions of the exam, or those of you who are only required or only have to pass the state yet. All right. The principal broker has all the following duties except A, prepare listing agreements, B, comply with office requirements, C, oversee and direct operations, or D, comply with fair housing documentation requirements. All right, we got a few different answers in the chat here. So as a principal broker, you're going to do everything except prepare the listing agreements, right? Administrative support, licensed administrative support, or the agents on your behalf are going to prepare those agreements. Complying with office requirements, overseeing and directing operations, and complying with fair housing are all very important things that a broker does. What type of property is encompassed by Ohio's broker lien law? Is it A, single family residences, B, a vacant property zoned residential, C, a 4-family apartment complex, or D, the commercial properties? D is going to be the correct answer here. This deals specifically with things related to leases, commercial leases, right? And the reason for that is that there's a title company involved in most, if not all, transactions, at least an escrowing company, and for purchase and sale, but for commercial leases, there is not. And so the obligation for someone to pay has to be enforceable in some way. And so liening the property in which a payment is due is what you do with Ohio's broker lien law. Question number 3. a broker loses her license and there is no licensed broker to take over the broker's business. In this case, A, the sales agent may take over only those listings that are in contract. B, the probate court must approve the appointment of an ancillary trustee. C, the sales agents may take over the listings. Or D, an ancillary trustee must be appointed by the superintendent to conclude the broker's business. That's the D's loading up the chat box. You guys are all over that one. Great job. Question number 4, under Ohio law, a non-licensed employee of a property management group may A, negotiate a lease between the landlord and a potential tenant, B, accept payments for pre-negotiated rent from a tenant each month, C, explain the difference between a periodic tenancy and a month-to-month tenancy, or D, prepare the lease agreement for the landlord and tenant. Yep, the B's have it. Right. And here's the important thing to remember. Non-licensed people cannot negotiate contracts or leases. You cannot articulate the difference of tenancies because that is a role of a licensed individual. And then when you see the term prepare, even preparing a lease agreement, a non-licensed person can't do it, nor can a licensed person, because when you see prepare, think actually create. So most of the time in real estate, you are going to be operating with pre-prepared leases and contracts where you are filling in the blanks. Creating something from scratch, downloading something off of LegalZoom or anything like that is going to be classified as unauthorized practice of law, right? So anytime you get into a situation, somebody needs a lease, somebody needs a specific contract for a unique property or anything like that, you're going to want to engage legal counsel. We have in-house legal counsel that can support with those corner cases, but really important to remember that even as a licensed individual, and when you see questions on the exam about somebody preparing something that isn't pre-done or fill in the blank, that's going to be something that you're going to want to stay away from. Question number 5, a homeowner is selling his house without the aid of a broker. The homeowner advertises that he will give anyone who buys his home 2 free airline tickets anywhere in the continental United States. What is true? A, this inducement is a violation of the Ohio Revised Code. B, this is perfectly legitimate and does not need to be disclosed on a sales contract. C, a seller is not authorized to give an inducement of any manner to an unrepresented buyer. Or D, this inducement must be disclosed in the sales contract. I feel very strongly that it is B, and that is correct. Ohio licensing laws require brokers and sales agents to disclose this stuff. Since there's no agent involved here, the disclosure is not necessary on behalf of the homeowner. So it's an important distinction, right? When you're thinking about these scenarios, licensed and unlicensed is important. So there's no agent that we know of in this transaction, so that disclosure isn't required because Ohio license law doesn't apply. Question number 6. The rate of commission for residential properties is set by A, the Ohio Real Estate Board, B, the Ohio Real Estate Commission, C, the multiple listing group, or D, the broker and the principal. D, that is set by the broker and the person selling the house. You negotiate your own commission. We'll teach you and coach you and support you to listing at the full 7%. Question number 7, upon the death of a licensed broker, what might occur? A, the Ohio Real Estate Commission appoints an ancillary trustee. B, the superintendent appoints an ancillary trustee. C, the sales agents take over the listings. Or D, a broker within the business entity of the deceased broker takes over the listings. Remember, if you don't know the answer, just put a question mark. All right. Anybody who threw out an answer want to share their thoughts on why it is what they think it is? No, not that confident. Okay, so the key word here in the question is what might occur. At least from the way that I'm reading, right? So the appointment of an ancillary trustee would happen through probate. Since none of these questions have probate, if there is another broker at the brokerage, they within the business entity within that brokerage, they would take over the listings in the event, I believe, in the event that that person passed away. So that way it stays within the entity. It's assumed by an existing broker, does not require the appointment. If there's no other broker, right? So, and this is where that might occur. So we don't have the information. So it could occur that the broker dies, another broker takes over. If there's no other broker in the mix here, then that's where the probate court is going to get involved. And that's where they're going to then appoint someone who's ultimately going to be approved. They're going to appoint I believe the superintendent will appoint the ancillary trustee approved by the probate court. Question number 8. John, a real estate agent, has been found guilty of violating the Federal Fair Housing Act for the 3rd time. What is most likely to occur? A, the commission will revoke John's license. B, John's license will be suspended for 2 months. C, he'll be fined $2,500. Or D, they will suspend his license. Yeah, 3rd violation of a Federal Fair Housing Act is guaranteed revocation. First offense, they can suspend it, but they might not. Second offense, they will suspend it or revoke it. And third, they will revoke it. What lien automatically attaches to a commercial property to secure a broker's commission? Is it A, a broker lien, B, a judgment lien, C, a mechanics lien, or D, an attachment lien? This is going to be the same scenario in that commercial broker's lien. Under broker lien law, lien only applies to commercial properties, but this is to ensure the payment of the broker's commission in securing the lease. Question number 10, what would you expect an Ohio property manager to do? A, convert the apartments into condominiums for the landlord. B, prepare lease agreements for the tenants to sign. C, initiate actions to recover rent. Or D, prepare a land contract in which the landlord wanted to sell the property to a tenant. So the correct answer here is going to be C. Remember this word prepare. right? Preparing lease agreements means creating lease agreements, which they cannot do. Preparing a land contract, same thing. Converting the apartments is not something within the scope of that individual as a property manager. Question number 11. Who does an agent need to notify for a change of his or her home address? Is it A, the commission, B, the division, C, their broker, or D, their local board of realtors? B is going to be correct. That is the Ohio Division of Real Estate. The Ohio Division of Real Estate is going to be the group that needs to be notified. I would encourage you to notify your broker as well. We'd always love to know when we send you mail that it's getting to the right spot. However, the requirement is to the Ohio Division of Real Estate. Which of the following is a violation of license law? A, offering training to pre-licensing agents. Boy, I sure hope not. B, having acted as a broker without the authority, impeding the ability of a principal broker to perform their duties, or impeding the ability of a management level licensee to perform their duties. C, hiring other salespeople from different brokerages, or D, offering a CMA to a landowner. And as you have all identified, that wordy answer is the correct one. These are all prohibited by Ohio license law. Question number 13. From where does the real estate licensee get the 19 articles of the canon of ethics? Is it A, the Ohio Association of Realtors, B, the National Association of Realtors, C, the Division of Real Estate, or D, the Ohio Real Estate Commission? So the correct answer here is going to be D, right? Now, there's a code of ethics that the National Association of Realtors have. And then there's a canon of ethics that the Ohio Real Estate Commission has, right? So D is going to be the correct answer here. And the way to remember this is that canons can hurt you, codes cannot. And so the violations of the canons of ethics can put your license in jeopardy, right? Through the Ohio Real Estate Commission. Violations of the code of ethics are bad for the industry and bad for business, but your violations around the National Association or Ohio Association of Realtors have no impact on your licensure, but the canon of ethics through the Ohio Real Estate Commission can. Question number 14. A sales agent in his states in his advertisement they will provide a free room addition to anyone who buys his listing. What's true? A, this is legal as long as the inducement is disclosed. B, this is legal as long as it's noted in the sales contract. C, this is unethical as the sales agent may not offer any type of inducement. Or D, this is unethical as the sales agent is not allowed to offer improvement in real estate as an inducement. So it looks like we got B's and D's. People think it's legal as long as it is disclosed. And it looks like we're mostly D's on this one. So I will go with the masses. The answer was B, as long as it's noted in the sales contract, right? So you're not allowed to offer improvements for properties as a prize in a lottery or a game of chance. Can't be spin the wheel and get a free addition to the house. That being said, because there's an agent involved and this is an inducement to purchase, that needs to be disclosed in the purchase agreement, right? And conversely, if there was an inducement to list, it needs to be listed in the listing agreement, right? So everybody needs to be made aware in the documents that the transaction is based on. Question number 15. A broker offers a seller a free trip to Hawaii in return for a property listing. What's true? A, the broker must disclose this on the listing contract. B, the buyer and seller must agree to this inducement. C, the broker must disclose this in the real estate contract. Or D, the broker must disclose this to any potential buyer. So similar scenario here, a little bit different. So because this is an inducement to list, it has to show up in the listing contract, right? The buyer wouldn't care one way or another if how that individual earned the listing. So it doesn't have to be disclosed in the sales contract. Buyer and seller don't have to agree to it. There's no buyer at the time of inducing the listing. And so these other three options that involve the buyer for something that induces a listing are irrelevant. Question number 16. The principal broker has the following duties except A, comply with fair housing documentation requirements. We already had this one. I'm sorry, guys. They're not going to prepare any listing agreements. Question number 17. A licensed property manager is negotiating a lease on behalf of a commercial landlord. The property to be rented is a retail space in a soon-to-be-opened mall. What type of lease would you expect the property manager to negotiate? Is it A, percentage lease, B, a land lease, C, a net lease, or D, a gross lease? Which one would you expect here? So this is a corner case of a question, guys, and honestly, it's one of those things that if you don't know it, that's okay. But this, it's also a layup of a question. So just know this: retail leases typically structured as percentage leases, right? What that means is there's a percentage of the revenue that will go to the landlord as payment of rent. Where you most commonly see this would be in a place like the West Side Market, right? So they're going to charge maybe a flat rate for the stall, something simple. And then they're going to say, yeah, we want 10% of all of your sales, right? And if they're really good, they make a lot of money. And if they're not good, they kick them out, right? And so the opportunity there is from a percentage standpoint. So when you hear retail, think percentage. Question number 18, under Ohio law, every listing agency agreement must have A, the company policy for brokerage and dual agency, B, a mandatory extension clause, C, a statement defining the practice known as blockbusting and stating that it is illegal, or D, the diversity in housing logo. C is going to be the correct answer here. Every listing agreement has to have a statement about what is blockbusting and stating that blockbusting is illegal. Which of the following grants the broker the exclusive right to represent the purchaser in the purchase or lease of property? Is it A, the consumer guide to agency relationships, B, a buyer listing agreement, C, an exclusive purchaser agency agreement, or D, the agency disclosure statement? What allows you to represent purchasers, purchaser lease? C's all around. It is the exclusive purchaser agency agreement or a buyer broker agreement. Buyer listing agreement doesn't make sense. Buyers are buyers, sellers are listers. So keep that in mind. Question number 20. If a broker dies and there is no other brokers in the firm, what is true? All right. A, the Ohio Real Estate Commission may appoint an ancillary trustee. B, the superintendent may appoint an ancillary trustee with the approval of a probate court. C, any salesperson associated with the firm can take over the listings. Or D, the Department of Commerce will appoint an ancillary trustee. Nine times out of 10, guys, when you see death or somebody dying in a question, find the answers that say probate, right? Find the answers that have probate in them. Probate court is a death court, right? And so that's, 9 times out of 10 going to be the right answer. Now, I know I showed you the example where there were other brokers in the firm. It goes to them, but we know there are none here. So it has to go through probate court. It has to go through probate court. All right. Solid work there. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we're gonna knock through some financing questions because we said we would tonight. So let's get through a few of these. Which federal statute requires a lender to give a borrower a statement of total interest being paid over the life of the loan? Is it A, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, B, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, C, Regulation Z, or D, the Federal Fair Housing Act? All right, everyone has B in the chat, and the answer is C, Regulation Z, or the Truth in Lending Act requires this disclosure. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act requires equal credit opportunity to be given to persons regardless of race, religion, sex, etc. So any disclosure related things are part of Regulation Z, which is the Truth in Lending Act. Question number 2, the primary function of a secondary mortgage market includes which of the following? A, to sell real estate mortgages, B, to buy them, C, to make loans directly to the public, or D, to provide greater liquidity for mortgages. What is the primary function? Primary function of the secondary market is to provide, secondary mortgage markets are private investors and government agencies that both buy and sell mortgages. Man, guess I got moving a little bit to, it said accept. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, they do not I need to slow down and read the whole question, don't I? Let that be a lesson to all of us when we're taking the exam, to take our time. Here I am trying to rush through questions. I got myself confused. They do, secondary mortgage markets do provide liquidity by buying and selling from banks and providing a conduit to do that. They do not make loans directly to the public. This is Freddie Mae, Fannie Mac, Ginnie Mae, and all of those are secondary mortgage markets. My bad, y'all. Question number 3, a lender advertises that there are reasonable monthly terms available for the purchase of a new home. Which disclosure is necessary? Is it A, the interest rate and interest paid over time, B, the interest rate, C, the monthly mortgage payments, or D, no disclosure is necessary? So we've got some B's and D's in the chat. And Lauren's thinking D. Let's go with D. That's correct. So here's the thing. If you give somebody anything, right, interest rate of 5%, then you got to give them everything, right? But if you just say reasonable terms or, low interest opportunities, that's fine. There's no disclosure because there's a lot of things that go into it. But if you say, 2.99%, then you got to do any arms that are involved with it, monthly rates, all that stuff has to be disclosed. So any one of those is a trigger to do all of them. But if you don't do any of them, you don't have to do any of them. Question number 4, which class of individuals is protected under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, but not under the Federal Fair Housing Act? Is it A, ancestry, B, familial status, C, marital status, or D, sex? All right, C's flooding the box there, and that is correct. Marital status is not a protected class under the Federal Fair Housing Act. However, it is under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Question number 5, just one day prior to a foreclosure sale, the homeowner pays the bank all past due payments, late charges, and attorney fees. The homeowner saves the property under the right called A, anticipatory repudiation, B, statutory right of redemption, C, equitable right of redemption, or D, the defeasance clause. B's and C's. So we think that there's some redemption involved here. Certainly sounds like a tale of redemption. And I believe James is going to be standing alone with the correct answer here. Equitable right of redemption, or how's this? It's easier to look at it this way. If it's going into, if the sale's been finalized and you want to redeem it, then the courts are going to have to be involved, right? And statutory typically means courts are getting involved, right? Equitable right of redemption just means that it's between you and the bank, and that you're getting this all cleared up in redeeming your right to the property prior to anybody else being involved, right? Prior to the sale becoming final. So there's still opportunities for the redemption and redeeming of the property after the sale is finalized with foreclosures. However unlikely, but those require statutory rights of redemption. Question number 6, all of the following statutes require the disclosure of closing costs except A, RESPA, B, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, C, Regulation Z, or D, Truth in Lending. Answer is B, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That is going to be the one that does not require the closing costs. So we are getting towards the top of the hour here. I'm going to drop something in the chat box for you guys. I know a lot of you have already joined this, but we are seeing some good traffic inside of our Facebook group. Know that this is designed exclusively for people who are already enrolled in classes, and for folks who, if you have questions, if you're looking for a study partner, we're posting different things throughout the week, questions, conversation starters. This is a great way. Just click into that, sign up, let us know where you're at with your classes. And then get into the group. We've got over 80 people in right now. It's fun. We're celebrating people as they pass their exam. We're doing all that fun stuff. So it's a great way to just build some daily habits around your study to prepare for the exam, because we want to get you guys to it and through it. So the opportunity here is just get in the mix with other individuals who are in the same spot as you. And then of course, we do this for an hour on Tuesday nights, right? Every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Same link every time. I want you to know, if you have questions in the meantime, you get stumped on one of these, you're like, hey, why is when the broker dies, this not an issue? Then put that question in the group. Take advantage of that forum to be constantly touching and thinking about what's going on with your test prep. And as always, guys, if you ever need anything, you've got my name, my phone number, my email. You got everything but my home address. So if you need something, please feel free to just reach out, and we'll be more than happy to support you. But that's going to be all for tonight.